This tier list is judging your favorite anime based on dialogue, the conversations between characters that add depth to a story by revealing information important to understanding the characters and the story as a whole, going from dialogue so good that even the dub is actually good, all the way down to it's probably better off without dialogue at all, and you might as well just watch the TikTok edits. So if you're like me and you don't just enjoy the thrilling fights and show of powers in anime, but you also want deep and emotionally complex storytelling, this video is for you. First on here is Death Note. Going straight to top A tier, almost S, and arguably the best dialogue in anime ever. There's a reason why this anime is what you'd recommend to non-anime consumers. Conversations are reasonable, believable, relevant, and tension-filled. If you're not following the dialogue and monologues, I don't know what story you think you're following. Vinland Saga. A tier. For an anime that's supposed to be about a savage time in humanity where killing and plundering was common and acceptable, the dialogue is compelling and deeper philosophically than most other anime that are set around characters who are supposed to know how speech and conversations work. Jujutsu Kaisen. This may come as a shock, but C tier. The truth is, no one watches JJK, and most shonen for that matter, for the riveting dialogue exchanges. The dialogue definitely isn't outright bad, I'll admit. It even has some stylization and iconic lines like Gojo's famous "Nah, I'd win," but it often fails by being uncharacterized with over-the-top mid-battle exposition, and it comes off as trying way too hard to sound edgy or cool. For a shonen series, the dialogue serves its purpose of driving the plot and action forward, even if it doesn't always have depth or finesse. Love is War. B tier. First off, praise for the best use of a narrator in anime. It also filters dialogue nicely through clear differences in characters' interactions, internal monologues, and great character dynamics, and the dialogue is smartly stylized for comedic effect. Would have been an easy A, but for some bad exposition at times and forced background character input. Erased. Tier. Its dialogue is quite good, even considering most of it is centered around child characters. It builds enough intrigue about the plot and shows quite well how different the main character becomes from his younger self, and simultaneously how in some areas he never really grew up. Frieren, Beyond Journey's End. Early Game of Thrones has set the bar so high for fantasy dialogue that almost everything else looks like trash in comparison. But in isolation, Frieren holds up pretty well. It's philosophically deep and stylized with reasonable pauses that give the idea that characters actually think about what they say. Top B tier, almost A, but B. Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan succeeds in the characterization department, and its dialogue certainly keeps up the pace. It has some of the best dialogue in anime at times, like the case of Commander Erwin's insanely peak speech, but suffers from the usual exposition issues. Top B tier, Gurren Lagann. Jeez, man. B tier was a pretty good anime, but its exposition was so on the nose that its dialogue was just unbearable at times. Steins Gate. Steins Gate is pretty much the best anime at exposition delivery. Its exposition is definitely earned, as the plot is initially shrouded in mystery, making us want and wait for explanations of its time travel concepts, and its explanations are often handled with characterized intent and make sense within the story. B tier, because the characters can be oddly childish in verbal expression at times, which is actually characterized but still over the top. One Punch Man. Hilarious anime. It uses usually bad anime dialogue pitfalls, but pretty well with its great comedic timing. Can sometimes even be philosophically deep. Lower B tier. Pretty good for a comedy anime, cause most anime seem to think yelling and unnecessary facial expressions are what make for good comedy for some reason. Tokyo Revengers. Sappiest delinquent gang in history. I don't even understand why its characters only spend time talking about who's stronger than who, or sappy ass reasons why they like each other. D tier, barely. Demon Slayer. Some of the worst dialogue ever. The most fleshed out characters in this anime barely manage to be two-dimensional. Beautiful animation, horrible dialogue. The only reason I don't watch this anime on mute is the magnificent original soundtrack. Straight into F tier, Blue Lock. The dialogue is usually only good when ego is involved, or when they're on the football pitch. Outside the pitch, everyone sounds like an NPC. D tier, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. This will be the most controversial yet. Top C tier. The dialogue of FMAB can be really good at times, but exchanges sometimes try too hard to be comedic, especially the characters just screaming at each other. And for some, this may be endearing, but as a writer, considering this isn't a comedy, it breaks characterization and immersion as a result. Exposition is also heavy-handed, but overall, its low placement is a result of the inconsistency. Cowboy Bebop. Another one with good dialogue. Most of this anime's depth is unsaid, but expertly implied. You actually get rewarded for paying attention. A tier, Dandadan. Stylization over substance here, but I don't really say that necessarily as a bad thing. Very entertaining and occasionally emotional anime, but C tier, A Silent Voice. B tier. The perfect example of how anime can benefit from a lot more silence. The dialogue style only enhances the type of story it is. Chainsaw Man. This is what JJK's dialogue tries hard to be, cool and edgy, but it works here because it doesn't sacrifice established characterizations to sound cool. Top B tier, Naruto. Well, you'd think considering this anime is infamous for its talk no jutsu that it would have good dialogue. Well, occasionally it does, but most times it does not. Suffering from a lot of the same inconsistency issues as Full Metal, this nestles in C tier, Hunter x Hunter. C tier. Someone gagged that narrator. Its dialogue could benefit from brevity and reduced or at least engaging characterized exposition. Not bad, but not very memorable either. Code Geass. For an anime that's supposed to be centered around political intrigue, it's a tad underwhelming sometimes, and the parallel with Lelouch's college life and friends should add a compelling contrast, but instead brings it down. C tier, Black Clover. Oh my, I kid you not, some characters in this anime have at maximum 2 or 3 dialogue options. F tier, Jojo's Bizarre Adventures. Ranking this by a conventional metric, it would easily be some of the worst, but every time someone says anything remotely negative about this anime, JoJo fans come up with the "it's bizarre" argument, so I'm putting in a tier of its own. Bizarre. Spy Family. B tier. Great comedy and characterization, as always. There'd be a lot more lower-ranked comedy anime on here, but once I watch an anime and it's trying too hard to be funny, I stop right after the first episode. My Hero Academia. Its dialogue can be nice sometimes. When All Might speaks, it's incredibly motivational, but low C tier. That's because of its generic shonen, this is my motivation type character interactions. Bite Me fanbase. Dragon Ball. C tier. Haven't seen too much of this, but I'd be horribly lying if I said this was above C. It's where most popular shonen belong, honestly. Majority of anime, not just shonen, but anime in general, are just lazy when it comes to dialogue. I'm always insanely impressed whenever I see A tier or even B tier anime dialogue. To Your Eternity. Well, B tier. Dialogue of this is actually pretty good. Most of the time you're too preoccupied keeping yourself from having an emotional breakdown to pay attention to what they're saying, but whenever you do, it's actually really sound. One Piece. It's insane how this anime has such a powerful narrative whilst having subpar quality dialogue. Really, the major flaws I'll call out are constantly repeating his dream of being Pirate King, and everyone constantly asking the exact same question. What's with this guy? Low C tier, cause its characters still manage to be very compelling regardless. Monster.
どうです?飲みませんか?
Best dialogue in anime. S tier. Probably the only one in S, really. The dialogue in Monster is often more grounded and reflective. It's deeply psychological, introspective, and emotionally charged. It's in S because it barely has any flaws, really, and it manages to stay consistent throughout the story. Ranking of Kings. Whoever called this anime Game of Thrones deserves significant jail time. The forced input from the background characters about Boji's character in the pilot episode is enough proof for me to place this in D tier. Your Name.
君の名前は?
B tier. One of the best romance stories I've ever experienced, absolute emotional roller coaster, and its dialogue perfectly reflects the mental and emotional state of its characters. At least its major characters, the NPC classmates, still sound like generic NPC anime characters. Scissor Seven. Taken out of context, this anime's dialogue would be quite horrible, but considering it's a comedy with some of the funniest and oddly emotional character interactions I've ever seen. B tier. Solo Leveling. Nothing really bad about this anime's verbal exchanges, but nothing really good about it either. Its wealth doesn't come from its dialogue. C tier. Jobless Reincarnation. B tier. Disparity between him thinking like a person from Earth and speaking like a person from whatever his current dimension is called is done decently well. Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Easy. A tier for absolute immersion with unique slang, jargon, and in-world terminologies, plus excellent delivery. Even the dub is pretty good on this one, though not quite S. Bleach. High D tier. Yeah, not as bad as Demon Slayer and Black Clover, but not up to the level of Fullmetal and Naruto. Characters really just sound the same throughout the story, cause there's no depth to the dialogue. Whether you like this tier list or you're feeling triggered, comment your thoughts and check out this video to understand what makes dialogue bad, or this video on the beauty of themes in anime.